I'm joined now by Ambassador Husam Zomlot, head of the Palestinian mission to the UK and Strategic Affairs Advisor to the Palestinian President. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you, Louis, for having me again.
And I believe you were on those protests in London. What was the message? What were you trying to achieve with that?
Actually, it wasn't the message from us. From me, it was a message from the British people. And this is an opportunity, Louise, to thank the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands who flooded the streets of London today, of Manchester, of Glasgow, of Cardiff, everywhere. This was a scene like never before of the British people who are renowned to side with right, not might, to side always with fairness. That's what the British people are famous for. And today they have really delivered a loud and clear verdict that they are pro, not Palestine, by the way. They are pro international law, they are pro humanity, they are pro justice, and they are pro peace. For that, we salute every one of them who came out despite the intimidations and the attempts to silence them, to say enough is enough, ceasefire now, and full and equal application of international law. That is commendable, Louise, really commendable.
And I spoke to a representative spokesperson for the Israeli government earlier, and I put to him these protests taking place around the world and asked whether it would factor into any decision making on the Israeli side. And he said, frankly, no. What's your reaction to that?
It's very regrettable, but he needs to learn the lesson of history. In fact, the anti-apartheid movement that ended apartheid in South Africa emanated from London. It was the British people who started it. That's why you have South Africa House in Trafalgar Square standing there to remind everybody of the role of the people, particularly the British people. So what happened today, what happened every Saturday since the beginning of the assault on Gaza, is such an indicator that the British people, the people of the world, in Europe, in the US, in Africa, in Asia, everywhere, are going to continue the pressure until Israel quits its occupation, its colonization, its besiegement, and its apartheid in Palestine.
Well, we had an update from Benjamin Netanyahu in the last couple of hours saying the war has entered phase 2. So the intensification of airstrikes last night, increased role of ground forces. What's your reaction to the war entering phase 2 now?
Louise, everybody is hurt, shocked. Israeli people, the Palestinians, of course, Palestinian people, the Jewish people worldwide, and the people of the world. What we needed now was a statesman, a wise man, a father, who comes out and tells everybody that, you know, we will deal with this. We will actually say the hard truth. Instead, what we got was a politician who was defensive, hysteric, and in fact trying to save himself, not his own people. And it's obvious that that's not the message we needed. It's just revengeful. The message we needed, I think the Israeli people need to hear the hard truth, that Israel has got to end its control over an entire nation that does not want that control, that Israel has got to end its occupation, that this is the moment when we tell the Israeli people, by their leaders, that it's not, the message is not what you want to hear, the message is what you should hear. And Netanyahu didn't do that. His message to Jewish people all over, you spoke about the demo earlier, you know, these hundreds of thousands, many of them were Jewish people, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. You know, the biggest demonstrations in America are done by the Jewish people. What are the fundamental values of the Jewish faith? It is this, it is justice, truth, and peace. These are the three words. They needed a Netanyahu, they needed a leader to tell them we need to stick by our values right this moment. And we, the Palestinians, needed to hear they are not fighting our families, they are not fighting our civilians.
They were very clear that they were saying they were not fighting the civilians. They were fighting Hamas. They are targeting Hamas. They are targeting the terrorist network in their words. They were targeting the underground tunnels. And he was saying that Palestinian lives will be better off, will improve if Hamas was gone.
I would believe your reporters, the BBC reporters, not Netanyahu, targeting our families, neighborhood, killing 8,000, among them 3,000 children is targeting Hamas. Bombing hospitals is targeting Hamas. Bombing churches and mosques is targeting Hamas. Bombing our entire civil infrastructure, rescue teams, medical teams, what have you, is targeting Hamas. Cutting water and food and electricity, cutting telecommunication. Now I just heard, before I got into the studio, that one of the Israeli generals is sending a message to the Palestinian people in Gaza. How are they going to receive it? How are they going to know what they are talking?
They've been repeated messages to move from the north to the south for days and days and days. That's been clear.
Let me be clear. Israel is not fighting Hamas. Israel is fighting our people, and not only in Gaza. They are fighting our people as we speak in Jerusalem, in the West Bank. Today, we have seen horrific scenes of pogroms against our communities all over the West Bank, of militias, illegal settler militias, armed to their teeth by their Minister of National Security, the supremacist Ben-Gvir, to do one thing, to kill Palestinian civilians in the West Bank. And guess what? Palestinian citizens of Israel, inside Israel, are also being targeted, are also being pushed away. So therefore, this is a war against the Palestinian people. And this war has been lasting for 75 years, Louise. This has not begun recently.
The Israelis today saying that Hamas use Palestinians as human shields. Do they?
You know what? You know, killing the victims, then blaming the victims for killing themselves, like Hamas rocket on the hospital, like Shireen Abu Akleh was killed by a Palestinian, remember your colleague, the journalist, blaming the victims for killing themselves. And then when all that doesn't work, then the victims are using children for human shield. Okay, for the sake of the Israeli propaganda, let's assume that. Imagine a psychopath in London takes 10 children into a hospital and then takes them hostage. The British authorities would go and bombard that hospital? Seriously, Louise? I mean, really? The British army bombarded Belfast or Dublin? Or I mean, what is this logic that Palestinian groups take their own people hostages? This is racism. This is sickness. And it must end, and it must never be repeated by international media.
Husam Zomlot, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
You're most welcome.